Welcome to my YouTube channel. So 2023 is winding down and the holiday season is upon us. So if you're thinking about getting maybe a holiday gift for a bourbon lover of yours, or maybe you're a bourbon lover and you're looking to get something for yourself, I've got 5 suggestions here that are not bourbon. And, you know, I have so much back here that is bourbon, and while they're nuanced and different, sometimes I'm looking for something different. I think the holiday seasons are a great time to maybe try something different. So we're going to go through some of these suggestions, and hopefully something here strikes your fancy. And again, pick it up for a buddy or get yourself a nice gift. So let's start off with Balcones Lineage. This is a Texas single malt whiskey, comes in at 94 proof. So single malts, let's talk a little bit about single malts. I'm kind of getting into them. It's an up and coming category. It's not technically an official category yet, but it will be soon. And when I talk to my friends about single malts, and there's a ton of great American single malts out there, the typical reaction I get from people is, I don't like Scotch. And I think that's kind of interesting because I think most people's maybe exposure to Scotch maybe is something like a Lagavulin or Laphroaig or something that's really peaty and smoky. But there's tons of Scotch whiskeys that are not smoky at all. And there's tons of American single malt whiskeys that are also not smoky. So if you like bourbon, some of these American single malts have some familiar bourbon notes to them, but there's also something different. They're made typically, like this is made with 100% malted barley. But that malted barley gives it this sweetness, this fruitiness, and I think, again, if you think that you're going to get this smoke bomb, that's just not the way it works. Now, Texas, Texas is unique. So the Texas single malts, to me, have a little bit of a different character. And again, I think if you're a bourbon drinker, something like this Balcones Lineage, it's not terribly expensive. Balcones makes other single malts. It's not terribly expensive. You can get this for under $50. But it's fruity, it's sweet, but it's also got some of that Texas brashness to it too. And it's got some bourbon notes as well. And it's got, on the nose, it's fruity and sweet, but it's also got some caramel, and it's got some oak behind it too. And I think that it's different enough, but not so different, that this is something that maybe you want to consider. So that's number 1. Now, if you say to me, well, maybe that's something I would consider, let's also talk about Scotch. So again, there's different types of Scotch whiskey. Some are smoky, some aren't. One of the classic old brands is Macallan, and I was fortunate enough just yesterday to do a great Macallan tasting event, and I'll have to tell you, they make some delicious whiskeys. I just picked this one up. This one's not even open, but this is one of the ones that we did at the tasting, and this is the Macallan 15-year-old double cask. And it is absolutely outstanding. This one comes in at 86 proof, so it's not going to be terribly hot. But it's got this great richness. It's got oak. It's got some dried fruits in there. It's it has a nice mature taste. It's aged in American oak and French oak and sherry, oak barrels that have had sherry in them. So it picks up some of that sherry flavor too. And you can see by that nice dark color that the sherry imparts this richness too. Now this bottle runs about $160. You can also pick up the Macallan 12 sherry oak for under $100. And I think, again, if you're looking to have like the best in Scotch whiskey without having that smoke, and that maybe beating you up a little bit and you don't like that smoke, Macallan makes some outstanding expressions. If you really want to splurge, I wouldn't recommend this one necessarily for your first bottle, but the rare cask is just through the roof. But you're talking about close to $400, so don't spend that much. So if you're familiar with Macallan and you like it, I think this 15 year is a good place to go. $160, not cheap, but it's sort of like, in the believe it or not, the lower end of the price range. Obviously you can get the 18 too, but I think this 15, when we did the tastings, we did the 12 the 15, we did the Harmony, which is another interesting expression, and then the rare cask. And I kind of felt like this 15 kind of sat like right in that sweet spot of price and taste. So this is, again, one to try. But once more, if you haven't had Macallan before, you can find this at a lot of fine restaurants. Have a taste of the 12 sherry cask, see if you like it, and before you go and spend the money. But I think this is an absolutely astonishingly good, delicious pour. Nice holiday gift for yourself or someone else. All right, so you say, you know what, I don't want to hear more about Scotch. Let's talk about something else different. So if you're a bourbon guy, maybe you don't know that much about rye whiskey. Now, I had a bias, before I tasted rye. I just thought that rye was going to be this, kind of off-putting. I don't know. I probably had rye whiskey when I was in college and didn't like it. But rye whiskey these days is really going through a renaissance. And if you're not sure, if you don't want to kind of dive right into a real spicy, herbal, vegetal kind of rye, there are some other options. And I think I always make this recommendation. This is one, I think, for like someone who doesn't know anything about rye, but wants to dip their toe into the rye waters, is this Sagamore Spirit Double Oak Rye. So it's a rye whiskey, but it goes through that double barreling process like Woodford Double Oak or Old Forester 1910. And the beauty of that second barreling is that it just tones down some of that rye spice, and you'll get some rye notes in there. Oh, wow! So you still get that kind of herbal, nice herbal, spicy aroma, but there's also some toasted marshmallow and caramel from the double barreling, and some oakiness too. But it's not bitter, and I think this one is just absolutely delicious. And I think for, let's say, the bourbon drinker that doesn't know that much about rye, this is a good one to start with. Some other options for actually quite less expensive would be Knob Creek Rye, which has 51% rye in the mash bill, so quite a bit of corn in there, which also kind of makes it more like a high rye bourbon taste than a rye. But having said that, it's a beautiful bottle. I think this makes a great gift. I think it makes a great presentation. About $65 a bottle, and again, I think any whiskey drinker would appreciate this. It's great. It's great neat with an ice cube, and it makes a terrific cocktail too. So it's Sagamore Spirit Double Oak Rye. Now, if you want to take a little bit of a walk on the rye side, on the wild side, and try something that has more of that rye profile, but is absolutely astonishingly good, I would recommend this Dad's Hat Pennsylvania Straight Rye Whiskey. This happens to be a Founder's Cask, and I think this is the place to go. Founder's Cask, it's a single barrel. This is 129 proof. And you might think to yourself, wow, that's going to drink really hot and spicy. But it brings in a lot of this nice oaky barrel characteristic that, oh God, that's so good. So you definitely get that rye, spicy. Again, I always describe it kind of as an herbal, almost a perfumey aroma, but you get some nice sweet oak. It's not bitter, and some of the oaky, some of these single barrel oaky tastes tend to be on the bitter side, but this has this sweet oak, vanilla, caramel that complements the rye spice really good. It's 129 proof. I don't think it drinks as hot as 129 proof, but a couple of drops of water tones this down. And this may make, to me, this may make the best old-fashioned ever, because it's just got such a nice, bold set of flavors that it stands, like you make like a maple old-fashioned, or if you want to smoke it, or whatever you want. But I make it old-fashioned with this, with some nice Vermont maple syrup and some Woodford chocolate bitters. And it is just, to me, it's a simple recipe, but it's just a great cocktail. But this is also just as good neat or over ice. And this runs also around in that $60 range. If you're in Pennsylvania, they'll ship. They're in about 25 states, so you may or may not be able to find Dad's Hat in your area. But I would bet, like a lot of your friends who maybe are bourbon drinkers probably have never heard of Dad's Hat. And the whole Pennsylvania rye tradition, they've been making whiskey in Pennsylvania since before the Revolutionary War. And there's a great history of whiskey making in Pennsylvania. And Dad's Hat has revived a lot of those traditions. The other thing that I like about this bottle is that it's farm to bottle. So all of the grains are locally sourced from farmers in Pennsylvania. And I just think it's, you know, from like let's say just a local farm to bottle perspective, I think that's just another part of the story that is really interesting. So Dad's Hat Rye, they make a variety of them. If 129 proof is too much for you, they have a 90 proof. They've got a bottle in bond. This is the Pennsylvania Straight Rye Whiskey, 4 years old, at 95 proof. The Founder's Cask is 6 years old. And 6 years old, according to Herman Mahalik, who's one of the owners and founders of Dad Hat, he feels like 6 years is the perfect sweet spot for rye whiskeys. If they get older than that, sometimes he feels like it kind of kills off that rye flavor. So it's kind of in that sweet spot. And you know, this is a Founder's Cask, so the owners picked this bottle. It's absolutely delicious. So that's another one to give a try. And if you say to me, well, you know, these are interesting. So, you know, you've talked a little bit about some American single malts. You talked a little bit about rye whiskey. So here's kind of a combo platter for you. And this is another really interesting one. So this is New Riff Kentucky Straight Malted Rye Whiskey, aged 6 years. So it's not, it's a malt, but it's malted rye. So the malting process is basically, think about like that lima bean that you got in kindergarten, and you put it in a paper towel and in a plastic bag, and you watch it germinate and start to sprout. That's what the malting process is. It's actually taking the grain. If it's obviously it's barley, it would be malted barley, or in this case, they're sprouting, just beginning to germinate and sprout the rye. And that releases these enzymes that actually facilitate the fermentation process. So this is a Kentucky Straight Malted Rye Whiskey. So it has some of that interesting kind of malty sweetness along with some of that rye, but it's kind of a different profile. And at 6 years old, I think the best way I could describe this, and this is 100 proof, is it's kind of soft. It's soft on the nose, it's soft on the palate, it's got some warm, rich flavors. I would happen to be at the distillery doing a tasting at a barrel pick, and this is one of the ones that they pulled out, and I had to get a bottle because I thought it was so good and different and unique, but it wasn't so far outside my comfort zone that it was weird. So that's the New Riff Malted Rye 6 year, and I think that one's a great one too. So again, holiday season, great time to think about gifts for those friends, for those that you love, in addition to yourself. So there are hopefully some things here that you'll consider. I think all of them are excellent. And again, just something different for your shelf. Hope you've enjoyed this YouTube video. Thanks for watching.